Next up, we have Simon Storf and Rich Barton-Cooper speaking about black box scheming monitors. Simon and Rich.
Hey everyone, I'm Simon. I've been working with Rich, James, and Marius on building black box scheming monitors this summer. James couldn't attend in person, so Rich and I are giving this talk. So, why train scheming monitors? We have a similar motivation to a bunch of the talks before. We think AI R&D will maybe be done by AIs pretty soon, and then they will maybe scheme against us. We have a very general definition of scheming, so anything from backdoors to weight exfiltration to research sabotage. And yeah, we think this might be hard to oversee, and monitors are one of the main ways you can defend against this. Why black box methods specifically? So with white box probes, for example, you need to retrain them for every model. This is not the case for methods. They're also easier to apply when you want to work on the super frontier models, because as an external team, you don't have access to the white box internals. Of course, you can also use them in tandem with like other methods. So we imagine like a layer defense, and it's just one layer of many. And to make it more concrete, there's two main use cases. One is detecting scheming in the wild, which is like you have your like some offline data of your production traffic, and then you run a monitor across it. Maybe get some signal on this behavior and see when it happens, why it happens, how often it happens, and then hopefully you can iterate on your safeguards and your detection methods and be more prepared for more dangerous cases of this. And the other one is AI control, which you've probably heard of. There, the gist is just like using an LLM to monitor other LLMs to prevent some harm. And we think our results transfer well to trusted monitor settings. But that's more downstream later on. What do we need for this? We need a bunch of data, especially because we think that probably the way the scheming happens in train is not how it will actually happen in the real world. And so we want to model this kind of distribution shift. And for this, we gather a bunch of data from a bunch of different sources. And yet to just like go in detail on how this could look like for control arena and shade arena, for example, you have these kind of two modes, attack and honest. And in attack, the agent is prompted to do this malicious side task while doing the main task as well. And in honest, you don't have that. The agent doesn't know about the side task, it just does the main task. And this way you can get labels, and then with these labels you can train a monitor and then catch it. So we find that labeling is pretty hard. So when you have this attack in honest mode, it doesn't always work. So per default, in honest mode, you get a lot of reward hacking. And we thought we wanted our monitors to flag this. And how would you do this? You need to filter this out somehow. And so we used LLMs to detect reward hacking. And then the problem here is that there's this kind of circularity where you use your LLMs to derive the labels, but then also you evaluate LLMs on those labels. And so you need to do a bunch of human auditing to make sure that this is not a huge bias or a huge circularity. And we published our blog post, and then we just found that people actually do not care that much about the less egregious cases like reward hacking. And so we just made our lives easier, and we removed this. And now I'll hand over to Rich for some more results and next steps.
Awesome, thank you. So we kind of had this setup where we had the control arena tasks, and we measured how well first iterations of an MVP monitor would perform on control arena. And then we translated over to the SWE-bench test setting where we'd listed reward hacking. This was before we did our relabeling. And we found that actually the MVP results were that our train ORC was pretty high. It was pretty saturated quite quickly. And the test ORC, it did drop a little bit. We were actually not really sure whether this answered the question of generalization because of the labeling difficulties that Simon mentioned. The test labels were really noisy. The SWE-bench setting was basically really hard to label because we didn't have ground truth, and we needed to have all of these very specific LLM prompts to try and find instances of reward hacking. And it was very noisy and very hard. So we kind of had the question of like, well, we want to use our ground truth labeled data as probably our test set, because then we'd have like high quality evaluations of whether our monitor can detect like properly labeled scheming data. But then we had the question of like, how can we actually generate more data to train the monitor in the first place? And one option is just like catch it in the wild and like go and get all of that data and train a monitor on that data. But like the whole problem is that is what the project is. Like we're trying to detect scheming and we don't have a reliable way to detect it. So we could use sandbox agent environments like with side tasks or with elicitation like we did before. The side task gives you ground truth, but this is kind of expensive. And also there just aren't that many of the like side task related environments that already exist, and there was a big lead time to build those. One option is that we could use like an agentic simulation. So we like simulate tool calls with another model, still kind of complex. Another option is just we prompt an LLM to generate a whole synthetic transcript, and we see if we can like elicit scheming behavior in those synthetic transcripts, and then train a monitor on that and see how well that generalizes to the real setting. So we thought we'd give this a go, and our current pipeline looks a bit like this. So we kind of have this like initial scenario where we give it like a misaligned task to demonstrate in the transcript. We build a generation prompt which like has the schema that we want the transcript to look like, a bunch of examples of what the behaviors would look like, and then we just prompt another them with long context to say like, hey, generate me one of these transcripts under certain conditions. Then we kind of want this like generative adversarial setup where we say we want to get some feedback on this transcript to see if we can get our monitor to think that it's a real transcript. So we just like ask a model like, hey, do you think this transcript is real or not? And then just iterate if it doesn't, and then just iterate around and hope it converges on something that looks more realistic. And the LLMs tend to point out things like, well, everything just went a bit too smoothly, or like the environment doesn't look realistic for X, Y, Z reasons, and then the LLM can just like converge on a more realistic transcript. So this has some nice features. One is it is highly scalable. You can run a ton of these in parallel, and you're mostly like IO bound on the calls to the APIs rather than running things with high compute yourself. You can quickly simulate a range of environments that would be difficult to spin up on their own. So as long as the LLM can like have a good concept and a good description of what the environment looks like, we actually found some good evidence of like AI R&D settings being like pretty convincingly constructed by LLMs for scenarios like weight exfiltration. And it's also a lot easier to systematically probe monitor blind spots. So if we wanted to kind of adversarially train our monitor, we can like have a lot more fine-grained control over what these trajectories look like. We have a few uncertainties. One is that like the big question is, does this actually lead to a monitor that generalizes to real transcripts? That's an open question. We're gonna pursue it. And another question is like, will mode collapse occur during the generation? Like we saw some early signs of like the misalignment being the thing that is marked as unrealistic, and so the misalignment is just like erased from the transcript in the generative loop. And maybe it's possible that actually all of the ways in which models invent scheming will all just like collapse to basically the same thing. So we want to encourage fan out and like get a wide range of behaviors. So we have some future steps. One of them is to actually just use the synthetic data as our train, and then use control arena and shade arena for test, and run a bunch of monitoring experiments. And then once we have got a monitor that we're pretty happy with, we can test it on other outer distribution data sets. So we're looking at alignment faking, Apollo's work, and Molt from Meta. We're going to look at hierarchical setups. So this might be like training a monitor to be really good at like COT and actions, and then we're really good at action only, and then experimenting with like a hierarchy of monitors. And do a bunch of adversarial training to like probe monitor blind spots and like figure out where like naively prompting monitors might fail. And then also look at monitor fine tuning as a follow-up. Cool. Thank you very much. I think that's it.
Yeah. Round of applause for Rich and Simon. And does anyone have questions? Raise your hands if you have a question.
Hey, thank you so much. Can you speak to more about your alignment faking, like future work on how you plan to test for that?
Yeah, that's TBD. We kind of gathered all the data before we really knew what we wanted to do. I can see that being kind of hard. But yeah, we'll figure it out. Maybe we'll not use it, but maybe we can make it use.
Thank you so
I guess
much.
it's generally in the category of like scheming that we may want to detect via black box methods, and we'll try to train a monitor that's robust to all scheming methods, ideally.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Yeah, another round of applause. And not just applause, feedback. matsprogram.org/F.